Welcome back to another YouTube lesson presented by your teacher, Mr. Rodriguez. I'm so glad that you could join me this week to discuss the election of 1796. You can find this lesson in your textbook on page 189, right there. See? Before I dive in, I just want to thank you guys for watching the videos, for completing your quizzes, for participating on the Instagram page. Some of you were able to complete the Flipgrid activity. If you haven't done that, please get on to Flipgrid and finish that activity. Say hello. I just want to see your face. I want to make sure that you're alive, you're surviving the coronavirus. Okay, not a big deal. I'm showing my fat face on here. So if I can do it, you can do it. So as I mentioned, today we're looking at choosing Washington's successor. This is the election of 1796. So for context, President Washington had served 2 terms, and he set a precedent by resigning, stepping down, letting go of power after 8 years of service. Power would now be handed on to his successor, the winner of the 1796 presidential election. The 1796 election pit John Adams, who was the candidate for the Federalists, versus Thomas Jefferson, the candidate for the Democratic Republicans. You can go back a couple of YouTube lessons where I talk more about the differences between the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. But briefly, the Federalists were the party of Hamilton, right? They supported a strong national government. They supported the national bank. They were very pro-business, pro-banking. On the other hand, the Democratic Republicans, which were supportive of Thomas Jefferson, they were the party of small government. They were more in favor of state governments over a national central government. They also promoted agriculture and farming over banking. The Federalists also supported England. They wanted better relations with England, whereas the Democratic Republicans wanted better relations with France. So those are just some of the major differences between the 2 parties. Now keep in mind that for any election, the Constitution does not allow for the person who wins the most votes to become president. So the way it works is if I vote and you vote, our individual votes don't add up together to pick who the president is. Instead, the Constitution created something called the Electoral College. The way it works is this. Each state, basically based on population, gets a certain number of electors, and those electors will be able to then vote for president. This is called the Electoral College. So let's look at the 2016 election as an example. Trump did not win the most votes, what's called the popular vote. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by about 3 million. However, Trump did win more Electoral College votes, which meant that because of the Electoral College, Trump was elected our 45th president. At the time of the 1796 election, the person with the most electoral votes would become president. The person with the second highest electoral votes would become the vice president. Now, when someone runs for president, they get to pick who their vice president is. So the Constitution has been changed to allow for that. But back then, the second place person, the runner-up, was the vice president. And that's the way it pretty much worked back in 1796. John Adams ended up winning 35,726 votes. That's 53.4%. Thomas Jefferson ended up winning 31,115 votes, which was about 46.6% of the votes. But presidents aren't chosen by popular vote. They're chosen by the Electoral College. John Adams ended up winning the presidency with 71 electors. And Thomas Jefferson came in second place with 68 electors. John Adams won most of the states in the North, such as Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, which was his home state, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont. Meanwhile, Jefferson won most of the southern states, like Georgia, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, which is a northern state, and Virginia, which was Jefferson's home state. So after the election of 1796, John Adams was now the president, and Thomas Jefferson was the vice president. Here's the problem. John Adams was a Federalist. He belonged to the Federalist Party, which supported big government, national, central government. As we mentioned earlier, Thomas Jefferson, his vice president, was from a different party. He was from the Democratic Republicans who wanted smaller governments, favored the state governments, was more in favor of agriculture. There was also a big difference in policy towards Britain and France. Remember that as a Federalist, Adams favored England more than France. As a Democratic Republican, Jefferson favored France over England. So right there was another issue that would come up. So as Adams, a Federalist, took office as the nation's second president, he was already coming into conflict with his vice president over policies for how big the government should be, for how they would operate with foreign nations. And so there was a lot of mistrust between Jefferson and Adams, and that political tension would soon lead to problems which would resurface in the election of 1800. So here's our discussion question. Predict, what problems do you foresee happening during John Adams' presidency? Take into account everything we discussed regarding France and England, political tensions, and the media, newspapers, etc. What issues do you predict will happen during John Adams' presidency? So that's our lesson for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and to subscribe. Go ahead and hit that bell icon for notifications for whenever I post videos on here. Until the next video, guys, tighten up, or whatever. It's cringy, I know. I can't think of anything better.